I believe when they needed to do temporary assemblies, they probably just temporarily riveted because they probably got a lot more mileage.
I've been doing that, and the wooden pegs.
Wooden pegs is a possibility. I thought about wooden pegs. I've never tried it.
Yeah, I've been doing temporary rivets, and the reason I've been doing temporary rivets is because I'm really intentionally trying to play down in 1/8 inch articulation rivets, which is, by the way, what they used, but let's not worry about that. Mainly because I'm playing in my kids' armors, and anything over that is like, the size of Toledo inside the thing, so you've got to play little. And when you play with 1/8 inch size nuts and bolts, they're temporary anyway. You get one shot out of them, so why not? I might as well just rivet the thing and grind it off later.
That's on there for the duration.
And it's fast and it's easy. And if you put a washer on the outside, you just zap the washer off and it falls out. So.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So you rivet to a washer if you're going to play that game, and it's easy. You use the washer as the nut and just knock it down.
Okay.
Temporary bolts.
The line I drew.
Did I do most of my work with temporary bolts? Yeah, certainly.
That's the wrong. The line I drew.
And sometimes I still do.
Is parallel to the line I just drew on his. Although it's got a little more beat. There's now room for that. But that's that's what should be happening there, and that would have the same motion inside that cop more or less. I mean, more motion if the cop was nice and round and everything.
Okay, well here's a question. And on these elbows here, I was just talking with Zach about the fact that the elbow cop is offset a little bit from the articulation, and that these two sides seem to have the inside being wider than the outside. Now is that
I don't think that's common or even of any consequence.
I don't think it's of any consequence. I think you're right. I think it's completely variable. Right? That one is utterly different. Well, no, it's not. Yeah, that's different from that one. Yeah, they go the opposite direction.
certainly more extreme in one than the other, but they're both there.
They're both there. But they're different on that side than they are on that side.
Yeah. So there's so much possibility in the placement of those things.
But all those when you look at the point of the elbow is not in line with the articulation.
Yes.
Well, the point of your elbow isn't in line with the center of your elbow anyway.
Yeah.
But that one's the wrong way.
The other arm.
It's a right and it's going out that way.
Oh, I didn't know that. I saw it often.
Yeah, it's off, but it's off in the way your arm is not. Because, well, they wanted a cute rope on one side and they flattened it out on the other side, so they didn't give a rat about it. But centered often is not the case, yes.
Just put it back here.
As long as your elbow fits in it, it doesn't matter.
So Robert, can you help me explain why?
Yeah.
So, all right. So this line on mine, my lane essentially would come out further here, right?
That's right. Your lane is coming out.
So what is this deeper arc gain you?
That arc. Okay. Almost all the real motion in an elbow in particular comes from. Oh, this is a sloppy ass thing.
Don't use it.
I wish I could make it that good.
This is nice. This is nice. Almost all the motion is coming from the articulation between the lame and the cop. There's a lot of motion there. There's very little motion here. What this motion is the motion between the lame and the cannon is basically reconciling the part where if there was no motion here, let's say that the lame was an extension of the cannon, right? There was no lame, but the cannon. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. That the cannon just shape. Then it would still flex this far. Your elbow would bend, but when you tried to straighten it, that's as far as you would get. It would lock up somewhere here, and you couldn't get your arm straight because when the lames are collapsed in there, they're at an angle like this to each other, right? They're not coming in flat. They're not finishing up flat. They're finishing up at this angle. Yes.
Why do they necessarily?
Why do they?
Because you get more angle.
Just because, I mean, these, as it happens, these are finishing up flatter than I expect them to be, but
Those are
they're still not,
very, those are
but they're
very
still not
flat.
perfectly flat, because as I say,
There's-
if they were just extensions of this, this is all you'd get.
Yeah, those have what, about
My
8
lengths
inch
tend to
or
end up being pretty close to parallel. Wondering how I mean, should I stop it? How do I stop it?
Well,
I mean, if you
back
want
to
to-
the original question, is it reconciles this difference here, right? The difference between this and this.
Okay, so you're getting a few more degrees of flex just from.
No, of extension, not flexion. Flexion, extension,
Okay.
in the terms of anatomy.
Gotcha.
You're getting the few necessary degrees of extension. Those much beloved but seldom reproduced legs, which have that kind of a bump on the bottom of the crease.
Chartreuse?
The one in
Yeah,
sharp,
yeah, yeah.
There's one in the mat.
there's one in the mat,
Yes.
and there's one in the.
There is
There's-
another,
Yeah,
there's-
the 18 has.
Yeah.
Functionally, let's just like presume this is a leg for a moment and not an elbow, because like it's all the same. Functionally, it's just this. Right? It's the cannon with the lame part and parcel in it.
Yeah.
And while that'll work, it doesn't really sort of give you quite as much, it doesn't,
I made,
in this case, it cramps the amount of
with an
flexion as
eye
opposed to extension.
towards what you're saying, when I've done that, I've put in deliberately just the slightest of inward bits at the bottom of the ball, so it goes a little bit past the crease, so that the cop can fit in there and you can go straighter.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
real
It's
ones-
not even necessarily visible.
yeah, but you don't need it to go all the way
I mean,
straight, you need it to
functionally-
go down.
Functionally, you could make that crease by taking a crease that was cut off straight across the top, taking the lane that would normally go there and welding the two together like
Yeah.
this. You know, that functionally creates the same thing.
Yeah, boy, actually, there's-
But when that leg is flexed, oh, these are dirty. You didn't tell me these were dirty.
You're supposed to be
Why
wearing
do you think you're
gloves.
wearing white gloves?
Here, oh,
There you go.
Those are not dirty, those are cosmoline-filled
It's patina.
crap.
it's
Yes.
the patina of authenticity.
It's the inside of this one.
All right, this is
Oh,
great.
you go on the inside of that and you will really get
Good
banged up.
grain, yeah.
Ugh.
That's why I should be wearing white gloves. I love these white gloves. I can bring my like cool white gloves that like fit my funny hands. Okay. Okay. So that kind of knee with that bump on it looks kind of gruesome when it's flexed like this. It looks stupid.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they don't look pretty, and they don't flex. They're like they flex about 5 degrees less than you'd hope. You know, they barely go to 90 degrees as opposed to going just a little past 90 degrees. Does that make sense? Is that-
Yeah, I've built a pair, that's exactly how they work.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
then as far as that
you
much.
know, like I say, they're much beloved, but they kind of suck.
Yeah. That's why they don't.
That's why I didn't do them like that for a while, you know.
Yeah, they were a neat idea.
Is it accurate to say that the arc that you're, I mean, you need the lane to match up this arc, and that should be a semicircle, right?
Yeah,
So
more or
then
less.
then the flat pattern, when you bend the lane that way, the flat pattern has to have a similar, it's not gonna be exactly the same.
No, it's not
radius
the same
curve.
radius, no.
No.
How do you determine the radius of
By
that?
guessing, by golly.
Okay.
I mean, this guy could probably have a formula for you, but I do not.
Because it's curved.
Hmm?
Because those articulations are curved.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
what's
it's
the
a
radius
meeting, it's
of
a
it?
meeting of two, you know,
Yeah.
regular arcs, you know.
How do you
Sort of.
derive that? I mean, do you?
I derive it by guessing, by golly. I'm gonna derive one right now. All right, so this is like a little recap from my bucket of shame, right? This is about 25 years old, and I can't remember why I didn't use it, but it's made as in the bucket of shame too. You know, it's intended to be an early 15th century knee, and it demonstrates a couple of the features I was talking about earlier, which are to say, this outside is very flat here. In fact, I can have a little bit concave. It shouldn't be really concave, but it's pretty flat here because the leg is flat here. It's a little curved here because the leg is a little curved here. I haven't actually got this one set up as a left or a right, but I might, you know, give it a kind of a twist so that it, you know, hug this under here a little bit to make it either a right or a left. But that's neither here nor there. So let's just like take a piece of cardboard and shove it in there and see what happens. So you should probably take a fresher piece of cardboard, but yeah.
You're allowed.
Stale cardboard now.
You know, I'm gonna start with that lane I guessed about. Just as a starting point. The basis of articulation, in a very real sense, is it stops. You know, it doesn't pull through because you're trying to pull a thing which is too big through a thing that's too small. If you take a line,
Your arc length is longer on the
Yeah.
inside than it is
Yes.
on the outside.
yeah, and so it can't escape, right?
Without deforming the piece.
You know, if you take a line, if you measure, without deforming the piece, thank you. If you take a line from this pivot to that pivot, just like measured as if with a, hello? He's on a helmet or, spit on his head, I don't know, his ears might get in the way. If you took a line from here to here along this edge, of course it would have to deviate from the edge here, but you know, you could put the, I mean, functionally, these could be out on stalks for all it matters. But, you know, you could notch them just like this, but if you took that line, it's a length. If you took the corresponding line on the lame from here to here along a line just enough inside that there's a positive lock, let's say 3/16 of an inch, that line will be longer than this line. Or otherwise it'll pop through.
So what tolerance do you aim for knees versus elbows versus gauntlets? In terms
Well,
of
how would you define tolerance?
the amount of overlap? The extra material.
3/16-ish?
How about on gauntlets?
3/16-ish?
So there's a 3/16 gap from the.
The overlap.
Three sixteenths
yeah.
overlap.
The amount that is left when you fully
Are
flex
there
the
other
thing.
paper fasteners
So
in this kit or
When
not?
you open it
I
up all
got
the
some
way.
if you don't.
Yeah, when your lanes do this, your top, your lane, when
Yeah.
it's fully extended.
Some nuts and bolts.
Yeah, I got, oh, look at that,
So
my nuts and
when
bolts
you-
bag was blown up.
Crank this guy all the way out and draw a line in here.
It should be
When you
3/16.
pull it out, there should be 3/16.
Although I draw it on
should
the
be
lane.
parallel to
Yeah, I was
the-
gonna say, I draw
Yeah, I
it
draw
on
a
the lane.
line. It's sketched on the outside, but it works the same.
Yeah, it's all.
It's easier to see on the
It's the
outside.
same.
Not within inches of each other, and they touch in the
Still,
middle.
it's funny to find when different,
Way down.
a lot of it, you do something once, it
Going on the outside line is easier
works, you keep
You do
doing
it
it.
3/16 quarter, just sort of depends on
The
the
shape
shape
of
of
the
what you're doing. and-
This one's almost the square
Alright.
across, this one.
So I made a kind of a, well, you know, I made a kind of a guess here,
To it.
and it's really too short. Okay, so now I have some information. You know, and it is that this thing's too short, but I'm just like, I'm gonna draw a line here. And that gives me something to work with. And notice that line ended up pretty much parallel to the line I put on there in the first place. And this is, and this is an argument against did they need templates, right? Because like, how many of these have I made really compared to a real medieval armor? You know, I'm nothing compared to a real medieval armor. You know, total number of articulated joints that I have ever made is what a real medieval armorer makes in, you know, a week and a half. So, you know, can that guy work without a template? Yeah, he might well be able to. You know, there may well be no hardship at all for him to work without a template.
I mean, Tracy, who does our sewing for us, can work without templates and just shoot. Right? So she works enough. She's doing close. And she can go measurement, 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 zip, and sew it up, and it'll work. And, you know, when you're making each one different, yeah, works great, it needs a template. But I can't do that either, right?
Okay, this time I'm not gonna get quite so cocky, and I'm not gonna scallop the bottom out real pretty. You'll see that, you know. I had a whole bunch.
One cut out.
Yeah.
Have a whole bunch.
Grazie.
Grazie, vi prego.
Yeah, see, his mama taught him better. His mama was Italian. Alright, so that should be closer to the point, and it is. Okay. What we'd like that lane to do is to stop at both ends of its travel and to have enough travel in the So,
Nice thing about cardboard is you can just look through and see that amount of overlap.
this, I usually use a much thicker cardboard, but that's not possible, but I do see your point here. So we'd like that to come off at kind of a tangent to that, more or less, right? I mean, this, we're gonna shoot for this as our angle.
You want a bit more angle on it?
I think I'm gonna shoot for this right now.
It's a little, it flexes a little funny and it's gonna
My,
be a little different.
my
than
rule
where
of
we're
thumb
on.
has always been I wanted to get more angle than the piece before.
Right, a little beyond tangent,
Yeah.
yeah. Because by the time this has got
And I
just a little
offer
bit of
that,
compound
not a-
curvature, it'll look smooth.
I'm not offering that as the right answer. I'm, this is what I do.
Right. I mean, when we were playing with that Lego there, I was showing that when it's flexed, as long as you don't overflex it and everything, it roughly gives you a nice even curve.
Yeah.
So the cop is continued on in, and that's his tangent gain here.
Yeah.
It changes
But once-
a little when you
but
dish
once-
it, but
Yeah,
not
once,
much.
once you put the curve in, it nests in.
Like I said, it depends
So
on how
if you're
you play the game.
past,
So if I was doing this in my own shop and I had all my tools, I would make that mark with the pencil, and then I would take my rotary punch and I would tentatively nick at it. I'd just like see if it pressed a ring in which was concentric with that mark that I'd made, and if it didn't, I would like adjust it. If it did, I'd go back and find that by feel and press it through for real. With this thing, I could be off by a half a diameter, and it would be hard to tell because there's, I mean,
so
of course, when you're using one of these, you take a center punch mark and you take a center punch and make a mark and you find it with the prick of the punch, but that's not a possibility here. I suggest this
Unless you
just
blow
to
it.
demonstrate the question of how much, how fussy I am or am not about that location. And
for cardstock, I tend to use a leather punch.
that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, I use it. And I would make a much smaller hole in this, which would be,
Yeah.
which would be commensurate with the idea that it's paper fasteners and not rivets. Okay, so now that gets us to there. Well, that seems okay. It's a little maybe too much, but the
But the metal would be thicker.
metal's gonna be
so that
thicker,
would-
and so this is, and at the moment, we haven't got our, we got just a little over 3/16 in plate. This is gonna be good when it's made out of metal. That's the upshot. And if it isn't, if it turns out that the metal is too thick, we can relax this by skeezing off the pivot points a little bit. We can take a file and just open that off and back off the tolerances. It's harder to go the other way.
Or you can actually use the punch if you're using fairly light.
You can nibble
metal.
it, yeah.
Yeah, that's what
I usually use a file,
Okay.
because I'm not gonna go more than a little bit anyway.
Is the change because of the thickness? The
Thickness of the metal.
Well, yeah, but is that why you use the thicker cardboard?
I like to use thicker cardboard so it's closer to the thickness of the metal, yeah. Okay, so now we know where that is. And let's just see where this is, just to be sure. And that's the amount that it's gonna actually move. And we don't care if this outer edge disappears under the cop when the joint is straight. It just doesn't matter.
What we do, we kinda want it to.
Yeah, right, we kind of want it to disappear under there, but it doesn't, it should dip under it. I mean, it could show a little bit, or it could dip under, or it could dip under a lot. But it depends on where we're going. Are we going to another lane, or are we going to a cannon? But somewhere in that range. As far as the height here, we have to have these. We want these as high as far up as we can, more or less. Close to this edge. If we felt for some reason we had to have these closer, we would still want to have them parallel that edge, and we want the edge to disappear under the cop at that point. But since this is the line I want that to be on, I'm gonna move them up to a reasonable distance there. Now, as far as the location of this pivot is concerned, if it's right here, we can get at it on the angle and we can work on it. And by the time it moves here, it will have fallen away from the surface enough that it'll pass under the wing and everything's good. If it was closer, it might catch on the wing and it might not. If it was too close, we'd be hard pressed to back it while we were peening it up. If it was under the wing, it would still work functionally, but we couldn't get at it.
Yeah, assemble it in just the right
Yeah.
order then, and it's a real.
And that's a pain in the ass, yeah. But it could be farther forward and it would still work. It'd be all the same. As long as it's, you know, there's like a range of places it could be and everything would still work pretty much. But we're templating this one lane at a time. Let me back up. We're gonna make a sketch of everything before we start, so we have some idea where we're going. And we're gonna compare what we're doing with our sketch, but we're not gonna template a lane on a lane and a cannon on a lane, because then our mistakes become cumulative. Our differences between cardboard and steel add up, and the edges begin to stagger, and by the time we trim the edges, the hole spacings start to look bogus. You know, they don't line up as nicely as we'd like. So, you don't, whenever possible, you don't want to template cardboard on cardboard, except as a kind of a first approximation which you're about to revise. You know, you could template a cardboard lane on a cardboard lane, knowing full well that you're probably going to change something, just to see where you're going. This edge here, I'm going to cut that as a straight line, because that's the most typical thing. You know, it might be different, but it probably isn't. I'm going to mark.
You can do cardboard on cardboard for straight
For
straight ends. Like if you're just bending it, so
Yeah.
something like this, you can pattern cardboard on cardboard.
But those aren't
But you
straight.
have to know what the bend allowances are.
Yeah, but those shouldn't be straight.
You have
Those
to-
are dished too.
Should be.
Must be.
Okay.
They must be.
In any actual piece of armor, they will be dished.
In any period.
If they are to look correct,
Exactly.
they must be dished.
Compression, articulation.
If they're to work or look correct, yes. There are a few flat things. You might as well start with, there is no flat armor, and then write the exceptions rather than the other way around. You don't have a much shorter list.
So here's where I've like drawn the wing on there. We want to have underlap. How much underlap do we need? I don't know, whatever. Let's say 3/8 of an inch. And we'll round that corner off, which we see our predecessors don't always do, but I feel better about it. This is the line at the top of the cop, right? And, you know, here's our overlap distance. But let's say we wanted that 3/16, you know, we can scoop this away to maintain that 3/16, you know, right here like this, and again, in here like that. And that will make the job a little bit easier when it comes time to, make the thing work.
You actually see those scoops when you put it into the cup?
Can I see them? Like,
Yeah, like when you trace it along,
Mac.
when you put the lane into the cup and
Mac.
you trace it along.
Just make sure this camera can see you.
pardon me, I'm just cutting this out now. Okay, what were you saying?
When you put the lane pattern into the cup and you trace along it, those scoops aren't, you know, you don't see those scoops as I mean, it's going to draw a
No,
monotonic
it's a straight line, and
line, right? But those.
But here's my allowance, and here's where my allowance deviates in order to leave some beef for the rivet.
If you keep the allowance the same, the lane will fall off because you have no
Yeah,
place
if
to
you kept the
work.
allowance the same, it would pass through the pivot hole in this case, and of course, we can't pass through the pivot hole, we have to have some beef for the rivet to live in.
And if you look at the gauntlets over there and the knees and various things, not those things. There's a bump either on the inside or the outside, depending on what style they're aiming
Or
for.
both. You'll see stuff like that.
Yeah, there's bump on the thing, right?
Hammer and a.
Yeah, so on those Gothics, it has a point and sometimes it has a bump too, so.
And in point of fact, if you do the straight curve.
Go right through that.
Well, when it's all said and done, you know, there's our lane, and, you know, it's not symmetrical front, left to right, except, you know, if you trace it on these, if you're to trace it, it's symmetrical up to a point. You know, the one side extends past the other side, but everything along this bottom edge, and everything from here to here, should come out symmetrical. Assuming the cop is symmetrical and all sorts of other things, but you know, it's a good starting point. And I usually go back and make sure that those areas really are pretty much symmetrical, and I'll choose whichever line I like the looks of better or split the difference. I fuss about the symmetry of that more than our ancestors did. They were pretty devil may care about it. I like to fuss about it. But that's where the symmetry ends, you know, beyond these points. You know, punch clear. And of course, like I was saying, I would use something with these smaller holes. These holes are preparably large. You can't accurately place that on the next thing.
30 seconds?
A 16th is more of a point. But don't,
16th on this.
yeah. But you see where I'm going with that, right? That hollowed upper edge of the lame is critical to making the next lame or the next cannon work properly.
From what you're saying, you start with a cop and work outwards. Is that,
Yeah,
is
start
that
with a cop and
always
work
or
outwards.
usually, or is there?
It's part of the max inviolable rule of project progression. Start with the hinkiest operation and then move on to things that are based on it.
Okay.
You know, yeah, you could start by making some lanes and then try to make a cop fit, but that would be like starting with the upholstery and making a car fit.
Okay.
I mean, no, that's hyperbolous, but you see what I'm saying. You know, start with the thing which is more difficult and then make the other thing fit to it. You know,
Most of the details of Mac and me are different. Boy, we do that exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Yes, I start with a
I mean, you don't start with a visor and
Of
make a
course I start
helmet to
with a
fit.
cop.
You know, you start with a helmet
I
and make a
can't
visor.
imagine how
to
you could do it the other way, really.
fit. It would be very difficult.
Oh,
I mean, you could if you had to, but you wouldn't have to.
Yeah, if you had to make something for a piece of
Yeah,
design.
right.
Yeah, you could do it,
It'd be
but
difficult.
it's not.
You know, if somebody presented you with like one authentic leg and an authentic cuisse and lame, you know, you needed to make a knee and another two lanes or something, yeah, you could do it, but boy, you'd rather not have to. You know,
Yes.
it'd be fussy work. Better to start with a cop, you know, start with a part which is difficult. And while you're doing that, I mean, this goes back to, you know, more Mac's inviolable rules of project progression. Make two of these. You know, make the left and the right. Don't finish up the right and then say, and now I'll make the left exactly the same, because you won't, because you can't.
I make them both
You
at
never-
the same time now, just for that.
Simultaneously.
I mean, I literally hammer the same
One
number.
course of hammering on this one course of hammering on that one, back and forth. And that way, when you're done, you'll have them as close to similar as you can make them. And if it turns out that you made some terrible mistake, you'll have a pair with the same terrible mistake, and perhaps you can use them for something else. In this case, tests for polishing. But I mean, no, I left these in the box of shame, thinking I'd press them into service as somebody else's knees one day, and that, you know, I needed this for something else. But you know, let's say that you made them too small. Okay, put them in the box of disused projects, and next time you get a small person, bring those knee cops out and say, well, do they fit you? You know, if they're too big, next time you get a big guy, bring them out. Do they fit you? You know, but if you've got like the one you made first and then the one made second, and the one fits and the next one doesn't, where are you? The other place where that comes into it, if you make them at the same time, you've now got four arches, four places where lanes go. And if you work very carefully, they should be the same in length and the same in, you know, in shape when viewed this way, within half a diameter of a rivet on the template. And that's a good starting point. So what you do is, having done those two lanes, or those two cops and their four interfaces, is you'd make up a template that fit one, and then you'd fit it over to the other and see if it still worked. And then you'd fit it to the next one and see if it still worked. And that gives you an idea. If they all fit perfectly, then you're golden. If the one always fits slacker than the other, then you know when you make up that lane, you better not punch the holes yet. You know, mark them with a center punch, but when you fitted the template, you saw that you really needed to fudge half a diameter. Mark them with a center punch off the template. But when you go to fit it in place, you'll start thinking about fudging that. You know, fudging those locations.
When I do that, I have, you know, flat piece of metal. Like you did on the center of that helm, I prick punch where I'm gonna have my holes before I even start.
Yeah, right off the template.
Because
mark those holes.
otherwise, you can't do the exercise you just did.
Right.
Because you don't have confidence in the similarity of your holes.
Right. And I mark the holes on the template for the cop too.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
And I just
And-
thought, you hadn't explicitly said that.
Yeah,
and
but I
thought
mark
would-
them right on there, and they're probably within half a diameter of good. But you know, the ones on the end of this lane, they are within a gnat's ass of good, because the amount of shaping that you've done in this lane has changed this line almost nothing. So, you know, whatever fits edge number, you know, the upper edge of lane number 1 is gonna fit, you know, in all 4 of those lanes, it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
So, you know, mark those holes, punch those holes.
One of the nice things about marking the holes on the cop when you're doing the pattern is even once you've hammered it out, you know that they are in exactly the right orientation.
Yeah, they're where
With
you,
respect
they're
to
where
the
you
edges.
expected them to be.
Yeah.
And
Instead of trying to go, oh, I think this is the line after the fact.
yeah, you got reference points at that point. And no matter how hard you hit that, you're never gonna eradicate those center punch marks. Even if you made them quite light, you know, you set it up and you just give it a little dink, you're always gonna be able to find those. You know, there's gonna be like, at a minimum, they're gonna be like 5 thousandths deep or something. They're always gonna be a small dot, you can't lose them. So,
Yeah, one of the other things that I.
on the other hand, if you mark them lightly and you want to lose them, you know, and you want to move them, they're not so deep that you can't just like center punch right next to them.
Well, and they're gonna get blown out in the waist of the punch anyway.
In all likelihood, unless you were so far off, it's crazy, but yeah.
And then with luck, they're hidden under the head of the rivet.
Or then they're hidden under the head of the rivet, but even if they're not, it's only 5 thousandths deep, it's a dot, it could be anything.
Yeah.
So
It
hammering,
could be a fly speck.
Yep.
in doing the cot layout, I also tend to run my center line and my center line and leave those on the inside of my piece.
I leave them on the template mostly, but,
Okay.
I mean, I do draw center lines, when I draw a template for a cop, I lay out these 2 center lines.
I tend to actually put them on, like unless it's got the Gothic point on it, because
Yeah, I'll-
it's easier for my
I'll
hammering.
frequently mark this center line, but not this one.
Okay.
This one's of no
Yeah, that
consequence
one's-
to me.
yeah,
But
and
this
it's-
one I'll mark, yeah.
To accomplish the same thing, when it's flattened on the paper, you can really establish where that is.
Yeah, and
when
as
you
I'm-
start
as I'm-
freehanding it on the cop.
Right, and as I'm working, you know, it's not like the crest is the last thing that happens, right? That crest is built up in stages, and it's nice to know where it's going. You know, to have some mark there about where you should start fluffing up that crest. But what other particular questions?
I have an
Something from the pathologist, no?
An offer of a tool, I
love that word.
came up, when I started doing my articulation, I came up with a set of small vice grips by welded 2 points that come together that you can adjust. So once you put your first hole and pivot in, just to check it before you punch your other hole, you clamp it right on your dot that you've marked, and you can articulate it without.
Oh, I see, before you've actually punched.
Before you
Yeah,
actually
you-
punch, oh, look, I need to move half a rivet sticks and so
Okay.
forth, you get it tight, so,
Okay.
Now I switch
That's
back.
a clever idea.
In fact, to
That's a
do,
clever
when I
idea.
do things fast, a lot of times I don't even mark, because I can punch one hole, fit it in, mark, use the clamp, check it, move it around, and the last hole that it marked is the center punch for the next
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
For
We have-
production work,
yeah.
it really speeds
Yeah,
things
yeah.
up.
I usually punch, if I'll try the lane, dry,
Right.
and just like, see if I'm in the right ballpark.
Yep.
You know, in case I did something stupid like, between the time I marked it and the time I center punched it, I lost the mark somehow. But just like as a reality check. But then I'll punch one of those holes through, put a screw in there, and then see how the other one matches up and decide whether or not that's really in the right place, or I have to start fudging it one way or another.
Right, well, when I instead of match up where you have to kind of move and move, you just clamp that thing on.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. It's a clever
Really
idea.
nice.
Yeah.
We had the same thing with a C-clamp that we had just
C-clamp,
taken
yeah,
in
it's all the same.
and ground to a point, so it's the
Yeah,
same
yeah, it's all the
idea.
same, yeah.
We stopped using it, just started eyeballing the way he does,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah, I think as you get more experience.
yeah, you just you don't have to sort of hold it and play the game, you can get the feel for what it's gonna do. But, yeah, anything like that that'll help line it up and move it around and see how the lane is going to move before you get the second hole in and start throwing lanes away.
With the second mark for the hole, if you bolt the first one, you just line up, and as you're coming to full extension, you won't be able to keep that mark in the hole.
Yeah.
It's gonna visually push out. And
A
then
lot,
you're
well,
done.
like I said, sometimes I don't even bother to mark the hole, I just go ahead and, set it in, you know, pull it around, clamp it, oh, that didn't work, oh, that didn't work, oh, that's perfect, there you go, and it's the last mark on the cop that you punch. It's found to be real quick if you're assembling a lot of stuff.
So why did this guy wind up in the bucket of shame?
I can't remember, it was 25 years ago.
Okay.
At least 20, if not 25.
So
And
I
it was the wrong size.
Shame
ago.
had that.
I mean, it was the wrong
About how good I
size,
am?
you know, I needed
Okay.
something a little bit bigger, I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't even remember who it was for, you know.
Age does that.
Does
Sorry, what were you
what?
saying?
Does not.
Yeah, I just can't remember, I think it was probably too small.
I have a question for you. These holes here,
Yeah,
so side to side, are they the same distance apart from each other?
typically, in this case they are.
Okay.
I make them the same distance apart unless I have some compelling reason to do otherwise.
I tend to make them the same too, but they didn't seem to worry
No, they
so
don't
much.
worry very much about them.
They did all sorts of crazy ass stuff. They also often put them wherever you would think is the worst place for them.
Like perfectly in line with
Perfectly
the,
in line.
yeah, in line with the fan, so there's a stress concentration followed by a stress concentration. I tend to like to step them in because it's structurally sounder, even though it's perhaps less typical.
So, yeah, it's a subtle thing. I see pivot points sometimes on the fan and sometimes.
Not very often on the fan, but sometimes,
There's
yes.
one right there.
Oh, do we have one on the fan?
On the,
Oh, yeah, yes, so it is, okay.
They're
But not very often.
not terribly often,
Yeah.
you are correct. And the other one's not.
But it's all the same.
But generally there could be.
Yeah, I mean, it's really all the same, right? Who cares where the fan originates?
They tend to be sort of, you know,
We
a
could
quarter inch.
just- we could just-
made this fan come back to here, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
I mean, I see the
one of
reason they
things
did it
that
this way. They wanted
bothers
this to
you
be
is-
skinny.
let's- I was
They
gonna
wanted
just
that to be
consider,
really
let's
skinny,
get
they
that
wouldn't make it
skinny.
skinny otherwise. What's the other side look like? I should wear it in the gloves. The other side, well, look at that, they're kind of close to the edge, well, that's close to the edge.
Yeah, they fudged it in every possible way.
Yeah,
basically.
well, that's crazy work.
You think
I mean,
that's
they wanted it
elegant?
to be
Yeah.
skinny is the upshot.
Yes.
Well, one of the things I came here looking for was actually the sort of answer you just gave, because I've always made them symmetrical, and I've always had this vague suspicion from looking at real pieces that maybe
They didn't
there was
care.
a subtlety I hadn't been able to
I haven't,
prove to
I haven't seen any,
myself.
I haven't seen any pattern.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as where the rivets are, I haven't seen a pattern. Now, as far as asymmetry in the overall shape.
No, I
there is a-
specifically meant,
Yeah.
was there some control I was not able to exercise because I was using the same length, but I could never make it come out with an answer that's helpful.
No, I mean,
So I'm glad to hear that you haven't come out with.
No, I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to it.
yeah, you put them on the cop, you put them, I tend to put them on the cop too, right about where you have them, just because I
Yeah.
can't quite get up the guts to set it up for cracking the wing off, even though they just
Right.
were perfectly happy to have their wings cracked off.
Okay, well, I have an articulate question on the lane. What, I would say, what radius is the lane dished to, or is it a similar, I mean, when you look at how the lane itself.
It is not dished to any radius which is like the knee,
Right,
right?
but, you
How
know,
much is that?
do you think is there a percentage
No.
or?
No, we're talking about the
Are you-
dish.
you're
The
talking
other
dishing
way,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what he's talking, exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
It should look nice. It should look nice. You know, when the knee is fully flexed like this, it should look nice. It shouldn't bulge like the Michelin Man.
Right.
You know,
But
it should go smoothly from cannon to cop without looking embarrassed.
is there any
Yeah.
ideas that, you know, because if you have a flat lane here, you've got this gapping from, you know, here it's
Why would you have a
flat.
flat lane?
Well, I'm just,
These guys look really
an undished lane.
Those are arms,
But
those are
you
not
would-
legs.
If you
And
here it
so
would touch and then
The
here it
legs
touches,
are
but there's a huge
dished
gap.
in the
Right.
arms or not?
So my
That's
question
too
is,
solid
how do you
rule,
figure,
but-
if you want this thing as
Why would you
rotating
want that though?
to be tight?
It doesn't have to hold water.
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
a lot of the ones
They're
I
not-
see
they're almost not
historically seem to be
but-
really pretty tight, the better, the higher
In
end stuff.
mid-flex,
There's
they're
some
not as tight.
But
You know,
even,
there's a lot of
even that one
variation.
is curved, right?
So,
Right,
I mean,
there is dish there.
yeah, they're always curved a little. Some of
See
them
how
curve more
tight
than others.
that articulates really tight.
That's it.
They're not very far.
Oh, yeah, right, it doesn't get dished much because it doesn't move very far.
The farther it has to
Right,
move,
if you
the
make a-
less you can do
If
that.
you make an SCA lane like this,
Yeah.
you need dish.
Right.
If you make a lane that moves like a lane should, you need a dash.
Wait,
Yes.
articulate toward the camera for me.
See, so
What
this
sound
they
effect?
fit. Dish. This is just dish. This is just dish, unlike the SCA dish, ones, yes. And down here, this is even curved, so that it gets, and of course it jams into the washer
Yeah,
and
the water.
buttons it up and does, and they didn't care. But yes, so it moves and it has just enough
So
dish.
Armor was built by Microsoft.
Yeah, it was, and
Well,
and to take it off, you have to push the start
no,
button.
bumper.
But you notice that, no,
Microsoft, but
here it's
it was
dead
elegant,
on,
not-
right?
not-
Here it's dead on.
so there's a distinction.
Yeah.
We got almost an eighth of an inch. You know,
Compared
it's
to
not as
I was
perfect
thinking
as it
more,
looks.
once we
It
give it
gives the
to
impression
you,
of perfect, but it isn't really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
No.
it's an eighth of an inch.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly make it fit almost exactly. if
You
were really, really
could, but
good.
then it would bulge here and look like the Michelin Man.
Michelin Man is bad.
Yeah, I mean, right now, it just like, it flows in nice and smoothly, it's
Right.
pleasing
So
to the eye.
that's the most important thing,
You
is
know,
the
pet-
pleasing
pet the armor,
because
it's
I
pleasing to
did
the
a lot of
eye.
them, you didn't see.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not manufactured.
Right, your goal here, and
Is
there's
it
the
should look
camera,
nice.
is that you have the quease coming off and the lane and the top and the lane and the thing. So
Yeah.
you're getting this
Just
beautiful
gorgeous.
flow.
Yes.
And in fact, these, as he said, this is a cheap piece. Yes, you're right.
I didn't want to offend you, because I know you didn't pay cheap money for it.
No, I didn't. They decorated it up. You know, it's got all the chrome for the Etzel, but it's a Yugo with chrome. Yeah, here we go. But, you know, and these lanes are almost flat.
So they're not quite flat,
I said almost,
yeah.
but they're not quite, but they're real close to flat.
but your eye can tell.
But
That's one of
they
the
move,
things,
right?
regardless of motion though, if they're flat pieces,
It's,
it looks different.
well, it's worse than flat, because when you bend the thing like this, and we got something that's really straight about a ruler. Ruler. Et appelez messieurs. See, if we lay that on top there, yeah, it's not showing very much on cardboard. If we did this on steel, let's take a piece of steel that's been bent this way.
Piece of flat steel.
There you go.
All right, so he's, oops, so he's just, damn it. You got one that you haven't flared the edges on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that one right there?
Flaring the edges to get away from.
Oh,
They're all-
They're all, I screwed up.
Yeah.
First prototype, second prototype.
Why didn't you make like one
Now.
of each,
That
and
doesn't
then you
work.
could sell your prototypes or something?
I
from,
guess you wouldn't have done that.
now, from what I have seen,
It's not a problem.
from what I have seen in general, and there's never any solid rule, but in general,
One
elbow
lefty, one
lanes are a lot
right.
flatter than knee lanes.
Okay, all right.
The one on my
You
cheesy
got
arm
that
is, I think,
That's the,
basically
think of it
flat.
as like an enhanced garbage.
And if you look at many of them, they
You're
are,
not getting us for better, right?
they're aiming for a different aesthetic.
Okay,
Right.
It's okay, I'm in here.
I do
So-
not know
Come
why.
in here.
this has just been bent over an anvil horn with a rubber mallet or something, right? And you would think a priori that this would be dead flat, but if you,
It's in, yeah.
but it, yeah, the edges flare out. I mean, everybody
So
know the
it's,
effect I'm talking about?
it's anti-curve.
It is anti-plastic, yeah.
Plastic curves.
You know, you can see light underneath there.
And we,
And that just looks bad. It's like worse than flat. You know, it's anti-flat, as somebody said. At a minimum,
Check it with the box.
this should be curved until that went away. But realistically, it should, you know, this ruler should roll on there gently. Not much, but it shouldn't tic-tac. You know, it should,
right, put the ruler on the knee lane just for fun. And it looks like, to me, that top side actually will gap if you push it, if you over push it. It's
Where are
pretty
we?
flat. Yeah, but it's not flat,
it
right?
is, oh, it's nowhere near flat.
Yes. I would
Not
go
a
with the
place-
central crease, but
No, the central crease, I
is flat.
got 10 thousandths at each end if it's sitting in the middle.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're 10 thousandths past flat there. Even though it looks pretty damn flat. You know, it's not.
Mac, one of the other things I think also is, for most, if Max, this goes to your question earlier, most SCA armors tend to make a big ass knee cop, and by making a much wider knee cop, it's harder to get that tight fitting
Yeah.
with the lanes underneath it.
Right.
Well, and then they build big ass lanes to deal with the fact that you wanna do this on a lane.
Yeah,
this size.
you end up with a lot of
And
legs.
you end
that
up with
Makes
this,
this huge circle around a narrow knee.
Right, and meanwhile, while you're at it, you end up with a knee which goes from here to here, which leaves very little room for the crease, which is only one reason why Scasian creases look stumpy.
And what I ended up having to do to get over that is rather than having a nice, shallow, beautifully shaped knee cup, you have to do like the elbow and make a deep elbow to keep, to make up for, so you can get on your knees and it'll flex a much farther.
So your primary articulations get more movement out of it to do that.
Yeah, if you do it, to me, I found it's easier to articulate it with a deeper cop to get the SCA.
Well,
deeper
that's
elbow.
a comparatively shallow cop,
Mhm.
but it's right for that leg, for that
Right.
curvature.
Right.
A lot of the 15th century ones are much deeper, but there are some late 15th century ones that are really shallow.
Very shallow.
Yeah.
There's some really dumb, and in fact, I was looking at some really high up-curved crease, full leg that was showed a full bend, and it went flat, and it was sort of you blew that one. Go try again. But that general, give it an arc, give it a curve, make sure it looks good at a full
Nothing
curve.
is flat.
Yeah.
You know,
Nothing the human body.
is a van brace flat? No, is a rear brace flat? No.
They're flatter.
It's flatter, but this should just have a little bit of curve in here. It look nice.
It needs to be tight.
Flattering, yes.
Unflattered.
Especially
What about?
From the spathologist. From the Department of Spathology.
One of the common things that I run into with SCA clients is accommodating for padding. And my
Yeah.
question is, historically, what were they doing? Were they just simply wearing this over their existing
I think
clothing?
there's very little reason to think that they were not wearing it over hose.
Well,
Like around a set of hose.
Yeah.
I mean, there's reasonable support for that cloth wrap around the knee,
Yeah.
but it's a cloth wrap.
For tournaments.
Okay.
For tournaments. We don't know what they were wearing on the field.
It's your extra padding for the hardcore time.
Exactly,
One more
exactly.
layer.
That's,
And if you're not-
that bulwark of thin blanket
Yes.
may well be the wrestling pad of its day.
Yeah.
But even that is thin.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's
thin. A thin
amazing,
blanket.
amazingly thin,
Yeah,
yes.
that's it.
Okay.
If you've built a leg correctly and you're not gonna crawl around on asphalt on your knees,
Like a toad.
like a, total blithering idiot. Unless you have formed it wrong, or unless you happen to have really bony knees like I do, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's completely irrelevant. There are some signs of some padded creases, lined creases is maybe a better way to put it.
Lined,
But
lined
it's
more than
not,
padded.
it's not all the time, it's not even terribly common.
But
You know.
with mine, I tend to wear a very, very thin neoprene
Yeah,
sleeve.
that's all I wear.
Mostly just for the abrasion resistance as opposed,
Yeah.
I'm not worried about getting hit because the whole joint has got to move.
Yeah.
In order to damage me, so, I mean, you're spreading the blow over the whole, a section this big.
Other anti-plastic.
I mean, if you gotta put padding in a thing like this, you could do worse than take 3/16 or quarter of inch of pretty stiff closed cell foam, half an inch thick, and glue a strip on each lane where it makes contact with the body. And that doesn't add very much bulk, and that's all the padding anybody needs.
Yeah.
And I expect you don't
That's
even
way
need
more than
that.
I wear.
Yeah, that's what I used to wear back in the day, just a thin strip glued to each lane. Now, it looks nasty when you look inside because there's a strip of foam glued to each lane, but how does that compare to like wearing some kind of a pad on your leg? That's
Yeah.
one nasty versus another nasty.
But historically.
Felt's good.
Felt's great.
Felt, some fleece, but neoprene and really thin.
I made a pair of legs once. There's a couple of creases and fragments of creases where the upper edge of the demi-greave has lining holes. There's one in the
Yeah. There's one, at least in Larte, that you can see from the
Right.
inside.
Right, and that.
It's on the bump top knee, I think.
And
But
that's
anyway,
one of the pieces
yeah, it's
from
kind of-
Kerberg?
It's either the Kerberg or the Met one, but I think it's the Kerberg one.
Yeah, or, no, it is the Met one.
It's
It
the
is
Met- okay, it's the Met one.
And the Higgins
They're near
has,
each other.
the Higgins has a knee like that. And I made a pair of creases for somebody once where I riveted a I riveted a little pad right there, a thin pad stuffed up with cotton or something. I can't remember what I stuffed it with. But, the pad is about a quarter of an inch to 3/8 of an inch thick at the most, and it just sits right here. And yeah, it makes it comfortable to kneel in those things, because that's where the weight ends up when you kneel. And you know, is that really what those holes are about? I don't know. It was my best guess at the time, and I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary, although it's not like it's a typical feature. But we do have two examples
Yes.
that I know of with what appears to be lining holes in that location. Hey, what the hell? You know, this is interpretive reconstruction, and it happens to work out okay. Do I recommend everybody do it? Well, no. But if you were doing legs from 1400, you might do it.
Well, I guess I could also relate this to overall, arming clothes. These
It's
are
usually
not-
too bulky.
Way too bulky.
Yeah.
Mine is, Tracy made it up for me, and it has one layer of batting in the sleeves. And I think she put 2 in the body. But I mean, it's that thin, you know, the absolute thinnest possible batting.
Is
I
that
can't tell.
What I wear is it's an arming coat, not Revival, Black Swan. I use their arming coat, and when I wear it, people are like, oh my gosh, like that's not a padding, like, you know, it's like, it's not the way it works.
I
What do
mean,
you need the padding for?
That's what the armor does.
Yeah, that's what the armor does, you know?
I mean, I've gone to the cheap method. I built myself a set of SCA stupid armor, just because I wanted to see how stupid armor could be. No, it's kind of higher end.
How
than
many
most,
times can you
but-
say stupid in one sentence?
When I'm building armor for the SCA?
A what?
A few.
Carpet.
No. Okay, mine's formed stainless in a 1340 kind of style. So that's my version of stupid.